Anxiety. With each day that passes, it seems more impossible to escape this word. More people are opening up about their experiences dealing with anxiety disorders. The increased attention has sparked a greater interest in the condition, and the more we know about it, the more startling the reality of anxiety disorders becomes. Welcome to Anxiety Hut. In today's video, we will be looking at the nature of anxiety disorders. To start with, there's nothing wrong with anxiety itself. Anxiety is our natural response to stress. It enables us to identify potentially dangerous objects and situations and helps us avoid them. In a modern world, however, we find that a lot of our anxiety is based on nothing, and most of the time, we are not in any real danger. However, once anxiety becomes regular and debilitating, it might just be the case that the person has developed an anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorders interfere with the person's ability to function and causes them to have a constant irrational fear and have abnormal behavioral reactions to their triggers. There are several types of anxiety disorders. These include agoraphobia. A common way anxiety manifests is agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is an anxiety disorder that causes people to be afraid of public places and social interactions that take place outside their immediate home environment. It is an intense form of anxiety, and people who experience agoraphobia are seldom able to gather the courage to even leave the house. The most common reason people with agoraphobia are afraid of situations that bring them out of their immediate environment is that an embarrassing and extremely frightening event, usually a panic attack, took place in a public place, usually before several witnesses. This makes them stay indoors in order to prevent a similar event from occurring. Those that do go outdoors are very uncomfortable when in open spaces, using public transportation or in crowded places, especially if they are without the company of a trusted person. They try to avoid these situations because they are scared they will get into another public episode and be unable to leave. In most extreme cases, people who have agoraphobia become permanently housebound as a result. Generalized anxiety disorder. There's also generalized anxiety disorder, which causes constant excessive worry about activities or events, even the most seemingly unimportant events. The worries are usually excessive for the reality of the circumstance. This out-of-control worrying is a normal part of the everyday life of someone with generalized anxiety disorder. Generalized anxiety disorder usually involves a strong and continuous feeling of dread or anxiety, making it very different from the shorter and less intense occasional anxiety that most people experience. People who experience generalized anxiety disorder often experience it from months to years at a time. Some common symptoms that people with generalized anxiety disorder experience are restlessness, a feeling of constantly being on edge, extreme fatigue, poor attention span, difficulty concentrating, irritability, insomnia, migraines, uncontrollable worrying, sudden aches and pains. Panic disorder. People who have anxiety may also develop a panic disorder, which involves the repeated experience of sudden attacks of fear or terror that lead to panic attacks, during which patients experience chest pain, heart palpitations, shortness of breath, and feelings of approaching doom. This can cause them to avoid the situations that led to the attack, regardless of whether the specific sequence of events that preceded the attack actually had anything to do with it. This is one of the main causes of agoraphobia. Panic disorders are frightening because the panic attacks are frequent and sudden, usually occurring without warning. During these intense episodes, people experience extreme fear and discomfort, even though there's no clear trigger or danger. The biggest marker for a panic disorder is continued panic attacks. Being unable to predict when or where the next panic attack will occur places people with panic disorders in a constant state of suspense. This, of course, can significantly increase anxiety levels. People with panic disorders usually worry about preventing future attacks. This makes them avoid situations, places, and people that are potential triggers. It is difficult to predict how frequently panic attacks occur. A person can experience panic attacks as frequently as several times a day, or as spaced out as several times a year. Every case is unique. Panic attacks and anxiety attacks are often used interchangeably, as though they were synonymous, when in reality, they are not. Panic attacks are sudden, painful feelings of fear and worry, but anxiety attacks are prolonged periods of fear and worry that might be slightly less intense than panic attacks, but significantly longer. Especially stressful anxiety attacks can build up and culminate in a series of panic attacks, during which the fear and anxiety is so intense that victims experience physical symptoms. Panic attacks are very dangerous, and the more a person has them, the higher the chances that similar experiences will occur in the future. Selective mutism. Anxiety can also lead to selective mutism, which is a condition where the person is consistently unable to perform simple tasks that they can normally perform easily. but in certain situations, they are unable to do this. Selective mutism is common with children, but teens and adults can also experience selective mutism. Sometimes, when selective mutism is not treated during childhood, it can persist until adulthood. It is not hard to imagine that this would severely affect a person's life and how they function within society. It is important to understand that a person with selective mutism is not refusing to speak, but is literally unable to do so. Separation anxiety. A common type of anxiety disorder, one that is seldom spoken about, but common all the same, is separation anxiety disorder. This disorder develops in childhood and is the result of excessive anxiety related to separations from parents, guardians, or key family members. This family experience, though experienced during childhood, can have significant effects on a person's life in adulthood. It was once thought that separation anxiety is something that only children experience, but it has become obvious that adults also experience separation anxiety. This condition causes people to become terribly afraid of losing people they are attached to. Whenever the person is separated from them, they worry excessively over the person's well-being and fear that something terrible will happen to their attachment figures during their absence. This causes them to take the necessary actions to prevent themselves from being separated from their attachment figures. They are sometimes plagued with nightmares about being potentially separated from their attachment figures. Social anxiety disorder. Social anxiety disorder is one of the most common anxiety disorders. It currently affects over 15 million Americans. Social anxiety involves the fear of judgment and embarrassment in social situations. People who experience social anxiety disorder are constantly hindered from enjoying social interactions by ceaseless irrational thoughts and worries of not being good enough and fear of not being socially accepted. In a world where connection is more important than ever, social anxiety can make life daunting for people who have it. The stress that surrounds social situations can be debilitating. People who have social anxiety feel like they are constantly being scrutinized. Social anxiety comes from a place of self-doubt. It is often these doubts that are the cause of the resistance and discomfort. There's a fear that they might offend others during social interactions, making them limit their expression. In many cases, people with social anxiety are unable to even make complaints when they are treated unfairly or when a service is under-delivered. It's like being trapped in a society that can't be participated in. People with social anxiety disorder may also go on to develop generalized anxiety disorder and depression. Post-traumatic stress disorder. One of the biggest causes of anxiety disorder is trauma. Children who endured trauma or abuse growing up, or those who witnessed events that were particularly traumatic, often develop anxiety disorders in their later years. Adults can also develop anxiety disorders after experiencing traumatic events. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you found this video helpful, you can help us by hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel. You can also help us by hitting the bell button, so you'll be among the first to know when we drop a new video. Have a great day.